How's she going, boys? Mike here. Welcome back to Grampie's Workshop. Boys, I'm glad you're here today. I'm still working on my workbench, so now we're ready to start making drawers. So that's the next step. Let's go. So I took some precise measurements. Yeah. Anyways, for all the drawer openings, between the sliders, right? Between the sliders and the drawer heights and the depths. And then I went to work. Well, you'd already seen this sketch here of the layout of the drawers. Well, I spent a bunch more time and I drew a little layout of what a drawer would look like, and then all the dimensions, the rough openings, I'm going to call those, and then the actual cut sheet here of all the pieces that I need to form up the drawers. So then I said, all right, I'm ready to go. I need some material now because I certainly don't have enough material kicking around the shop in scraps to do these drawers. So then I was thinking, what am I going to make the drawers out of? Finally, I decided I'm going to go with 5/8 plywood. And I drew up all these plans and all these measurements based on 5/8 inch plywood. I'm ready to go. So I went to the lumber store yesterday and guess what? They didn't have 5/8 straight edge plywood. They had 5/8 tongue and groove, but not straight edge. I decided I'm not going to get to tongue and groove. I decided I'm going to go back to the 1/2 inch. So I ended up buying a bunch of sheets of 1/2 inch plywood. So I'm not real disappointed that I went with 1/2 inch. Would have been nice to have 5/8, but 1/2 inch is going to work. So then, now I had to go back and redo all my drawings again to make the cut sheet match for 1/2 inch plywood. And there's quite a few sheets, quite a few pieces here. I have 16 drawers, and each drawer takes a minimum of 5 pieces. So you do the math. Pretty quick. I'm going to guess about 80 pieces I need to cut. So yeah, I have to do some layouts now. But when I do my layouts on there, I want to make sure I'm as efficient as possible with the layouts. So a couple of things I'm going to take into account when I'm laying these drawers out. For the fronts, for all the pieces, I want the grain to be horizontal. I don't want to have vertical grain, okay? Is there a problem with it being vertical grain? I don't know, I just want to have the grain horizontal. By the way, speaking of that, these drawers are just going to be the shells because I'm going to make another faceplate that will attach to the drawer after I get the drawer boxes made. It's going to be quite a little challenge to lay out all these pieces on the plywood to get the most efficient cuts I can make to have minimal wastage. So, armed with my pencil, armed with a straight edge, armed with a measuring tape, and with my cut sheet, I'm going to start to lay out what I need here for drawers on this beautiful brand new piece of 4x8 1/2 inch plywood. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time messing with dimensions and layouts, try to get as many pieces cut out of this sheet as I can. And after I get it all marked up, I'll come back and show you what I'm up to, and we'll discuss it some more then. So I've been spending the last, I don't know, couple hours or more trying to figure out the best way to lay out the drawer pieces on each sheet of plywood. So anyway, what I did was I went back into the camp and I went on the computer and drew up this sheet here. What did I show you? All it is like a graph of an 8 foot by 4 foot sheet of plywood with divisions every inch. And then what I did was I laid out each piece and figured out the best way to do it for the least amount of wastage. So you'll see here I've got a bunch of pieces laid out, and this is the only wastage that comes through the middle and along the bottom here. So didn't do too bad on that sheet. I ended up making 3 sheets of plywood to get all the drawer pieces that I need. So when I was laying out on the sketch here to make the best use of the plywood, I rounded everything up to the nearest inch. That way, when I make the cuts with my saw, the wastage I get from the saw curve is not going to affect my layouts. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take this sheet here with my sketch of all the cutouts. I'm going to transfer that onto the sheet of plywood, and then we can start cutting those pieces out. I think I got the first sheet laid out. The other thing, not only do I want to lay it out with the minimum amount of waste, when I cut it, I want to make sure that the waste pieces are as large as possible. So, you know, pretty small hoop I'm having to jump through here. Well, I'm kind of half set up here. I think I'm half set up here to make my first cut. I'm going to cut, cross cut right along this edge. This is the longest 2 pieces. And I'll cut the whole sheet right off like that. That way I'll break the sheet down into smaller, more manageable pieces. That's the plan. And to get set up, I had to put this strong back on here because this is only 1/2 inch plywood and it was bent this way. So because of that arc, I wasn't able to get my straight edge to lock down correctly. So I had to add that to it. You know how it goes, right? Let's go. Now, because of the way the shop is all cluttered with everything, I had to walk all the way around the shop to get to the other side. Anyway, let's try it again. I think we did it. That's the first cut. Now I've got two more manageable pieces. So I think I'm going to try and set up with the table saw now and make the rest of the cuts. One thing now I have to keep in mind too is when you're ripping this down is all my pieces are rough cuts. They're not finished cuts. So I do have a little bit of like wiggle room when I cut them out. So if the cuts aren't square or whatnot, then I can square them up later on. And then we'll cut these pieces. Okay, so I got that half sheet cut down. So I've got enough stock here now I could start to assemble those drawers, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut out all the drawer pieces first, and then I can set up to do rabbits and dadoes and things like that. So it makes less setup on the saw. So I get all my pieces cut to rough sizes. I have to cut all these now to their finished sizes. So the cut sheet I have here, this is going to be my best friend for the next little while. I want to make sure, because these are going to be the finished cuts, that everything is cut nice and true, no tear out or minimal tear out, and square and at right angles. So first of all, I put a new blade in the saw, brand new blade, so it should cut nice and straight and true, no tear out. So check that one off. I took my square and made sure that my blade was at right angles to the table. So that's good, check that one off. The next thing I did was I took my miter square and I checked to make sure that was square with the blade in both slots, not just one slot, but both of them. And it is, so check that one off. The other thing I did was I made sure that my fence was parallel with the blade, front and back, so I know now that my fence is parallel with the blade. I'll probably be using my cutoff sled a lot, so when I put that in here, I made sure that my cutoff sled was also at right angles to the blade. So we're ready to go. Okay, now I'll set the fence to 3 inches, which is the finished cut. So now I'll just confirm that that's 3 inches, and it is. All right, I finished cutting all my pieces to the proper width. That was quite a job. Lots of saw in there. But anyhow, it turned out nice. So now what I need to do is cut them to length. Because they are rough sizes, they're longer than I need, I'll cut one end square, flip it around, cut the other end to the proper length. It's getting kind of critical that all these pieces are cut to the same width and also the same lengths. I'm going to buddy these up, like the front and the backs are the same length, the two sides are the same length, so I'll cut them both at the same time. So to start off with, I'm going to line up these edges. So that's it. We're just going to continue like that and cut the rest of the pieces to the proper length. So here's all my pieces now cut to the proper dimensions, finished dimensions. What I have to do now is start cutting rabbits and dadoes to assemble the drawers. And the way the drawers are going to go together is, first of all, I want all the good faces of the plywood to face in. So the way these drawers are going to go together is I'm going to put rabbits at the front. And what that means is, I'll just try to show you here. I'm going to cut away this part a 1/2 inch deep on the end and cut it back in here 1/4 inch. So just as you see where I make my mark there, I want to just cut this piece off here. And that way my front piece can be stepped into that. And the reason I'm doing it that way is to get a little bit of extra glue surface to hold the drawer together. Anyway, I just think that would make it a little bit stronger. One of the beauties of doing it this way is all the drawer fronts at the front of the drawers need to have this rabbet made in them. So I set this all up once, and I can do all the drawers. Then I'll reset it to do, I'm going to be making a dado cut back here because I want the back part of the drawer set back a ½ inch from the end of the sides. And that's just my preference, it doesn't have to be that way. And also I'm starting with drawer number 1, well, because it's number 1, but also because it's the least amount of wood to make the pieces, and if I mess it up, I don't waste a lot of plywood. All right, I put my stacked dado head cutter in here. So I set this up for a thickness of 1/2 inch. I also put a sacrificial fence on my own fence. Also, I found when you're making dados, especially with my blade, because my blade is old, it's not real sharp, the wood tends to rise up, and I don't want it to rise up. I want to have nice, flat, evenly depth made cuts. So I made a little feather board here, and I clamped that to the board. And the feather board is just big enough so that the 1/2 inch plywood fits under that with, well, a little bit of clearance, but not much. The other thing I have to be careful of when I'm doing this is I have to mark the ends I want the dados on, or the rabbets on, right? I like to have the good sides in, so that means my dado has to, or the good side has to face down as I make the dado. Okay, so this is the side I want to cut. This is the good face, I want that to be in, so I put that down. Oh, the other thing, I set the height of this dado stack to be half the thickness of the side. That was important too. Okay, so there's the dado. It looks like it's a good depth. And as far as the depth of it goes, or the width of it, it's pretty good too, right? So I think that's a good setup. So we've cut the rabbets on this end of the drawer sides. Now what I need to do is cut the dado on this side. I want to come back a 1/2 inch and cut a 1/2 inch dado, 1/4 inch deep. And again, I'm going to do that on the inside to match the rabbets that I cut on this side, right? So I moved my fence back from the stacked dado a 1/2 inch. The stacked dado is still a 1/2 inch, still a 1/4 inch deep, and I made a test cut here, so that's what it's going to look like. And that fits good and tight. Putting the good face down to cut our dado. So then the back of the drawer is going to fit in like that. Nice fit, eh? Nice tight fit, I like that. Okay, I just finished cutting the last of the 16 drawers here, the last rabbet of the 16 drawers. And so now I need to cut a dado, 1/4 inch deep, 1/4 inch wide, 1/4 inch deep, down each side and across the front piece here at the bottom. But I'm not going to cut that in the back piece, I'm going to cut a 1/2 inch off the back piece. All right, I'm set up here again, I think, ready to start making my dado cuts for the drawer bottoms. I measured the drawer bottom stock that I have is 3/16 of an inch thick, but the problem that created was my stacked dado head cutter won't cut 3/16 kerf. I put my original blade back in here, and this blade cuts about 1/8 of an inch, so I'm going to make a cut with the blade set like this, 1/4 inch away from the fence. I'll do all the pieces, and then I'll have to move the blade back 1/16 of an inch or so, and then do all of them over again to get the kerf to be 3/16 of an inch, or a little bit more would be even good. But I don't want it too sloppy, right? But here's something that you have to be careful of. There is a left and a right, so because there's a left and a right, you have to be cautious of that. So this, I'm going to put my dado on that side. That means my dado has to go on this side, and that's something I'll have to keep track of. So I think we have the parts laid out, and we understand how we're going to cut them. So let's get cracking. So this is the front piece, just a dado along the bottom. There's my 3 pieces cut, and I cut the dados on the right sides. So I'm going to run all these first cuts first, then I'll reset the fence and cut them all again the second time. I'm going to move the fence away from the blade just about 1/16 of an inch or so, and we'll try this. Okay, so the Meranti should slide in there pretty good now. So now we're going to cut the rest of these panels. Okay, so that's the last cuts of the sides. Now the only thing left to do to form up these drawers is to cut the bases out, and then we'll be able to assemble the drawers. Well, we're out in the shop here. It's the next day and it's a little cooler day, so I got my shirt on, but the heat's nice in the shop here. I got her set at 14 and it's about 14.8 in here right now. It's pretty nice. Anyhow, I'm laying out this luan because I'm cutting the bottoms for the drawers of this luan. So the first cut is going to go right across here, basically cut the sheet in half, then knock it down to smaller sizes so I can get it on the table saw. So I have again here a piece of plywood underneath the luan and then a strong back on top just to keep it flat and kind of stiff. And then I put my straight edge on here. One thing I'm going to do, because this is sagging down so much, I'm going to put a clamp on here to help support it. Then I'm going to put another clamp on here just to hold these pieces together. Okay, see how we make out. Now that we have this cut down, I can put this sheet or this sheet on the table saw, set it up and cut it that way, so it'll be easier going now. Okay, so we're going to make a bunch more cuts like that to break this down into manageable sizes for drawer bottoms. So it was just about all afternoon. It took me over 2 hours to cut all these pieces out for the drawers. But anyway, they're all cut out. We're ready now to start making the final cuts and doing some assembly. So I hope you tune in for that part, because it's going to be fun when I finally get to make some actual drawer boxes. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget, thumbs up me, leave me some comments, and we'll talk to you soon.